In the 2014 Volvo Ocean Race, Team Vestas Wind smashed into a chartered reef in the middle of the Indian Ocean. The crash destroyed their boat and left the sailing world wondering how this could happen to a team of professional sailors with the best equipment available. That's exactly what we're going to find out in this video. The Volvo Ocean Race is a 39,000 nautical mile, multi-stage race around the world. Early editions of this race, called the Whitbread Round the World Race, featured boats of all shapes and sizes, but domination by well-funded maxi yachts led race organizers to move towards one design racing, where all teams use the same boat in order to level the playing field. In the 2014 edition of the race, all teams sailed identical boats called Volvo Ocean 65s in order to emphasize sailing skill, and they had to do it with only 8 crew, the smallest number of any edition of the race so far. The second leg of the race was 5,185 nautical miles from Cape Town to Abu Dhabi. In order to protect sailors from pirates, race organizers created an exclusion zone off the coast of Africa, shown here in purple, that all boats had to stay to the right of. The exclusion zone was discussed with skippers and navigators a week before the start, so there was lots of time for them to plan their routes. But a few days later, a tropical storm began forming near the British Indian Ocean territory, which would have put the boats in danger. So the night before the start, the race organizers quietly changed the exclusion zone to allow the boats to sail clear of the storm, but this meant they had less than 24 hours to update their route planning. All boats had the exact same navigation equipment, which included a pair of Panasonic Toughbook computers and detailed CMAP charts for the entire race. About 10 days into their leg, the route would take them over a shallow area, but with a minimum depth of about 40 meters, there should be nothing to worry about, so they sailed on at full speed through the day and into the night. Until they came crashing to a halt. They clearly weren't expecting that rock to be there. That must have been really disorienting. You can't see it in the dark, but the boat is pivoting on the keel. And waves are slamming hard into the boat. As you can see, the motion was quite violent. And the crew struggled to hang on. And the waves kept coming. The crew stayed with the boat for as long as they could, but after about 6 terrifying hours on deck with waves breaking over the boat, the skipper made the difficult decision to abandon ship, in the dark, where they waited in life rafts until dawn when they were picked up by the Coast Guard. Over the next 2 days, the crew went back to the boat several times and removed as much gear and equipment as they could to minimize any environmental risks. The boat was severely damaged, but thankfully it held together well enough to enable the crew to survive the night. But how did they wind up in this situation? Wasn't the water supposed to be at least 40 meters deep? Well, remember the 2 laptops? Unfortunately, the one design package only included one licensed dongle for high-resolution charts, which meant that only one laptop could zoom in to see the details of the reef, and the navigator didn't have that dongle in his hotel room the night before the race, when the race organizers changed the exclusion zone. And even though the boat had satellite communications, they weren't allowed to use it to receive outside route planning help after the start of the race. And once underway, the design of the software didn't allow panning at high levels of zoom, so you had to constantly zoom in and out to see the level of detail that showed the reef. This is a significant difference between electronic and paper charts, which generally show hazards at all levels of zoom, but the paper charts on Vestas Wind were only used for backup if all the electronics failed. There was also another chart plotter inside the companionway that could have been used to see the reef, but it was typically only used for controlling lights and other boat functions. There was also a depth sounder which should have alerted the crew, but in fast boats they often give false readings due to the turbulent water under the hull, so depth alarms are often ignored unless the crew is expecting to be sailing in very shallow water along the coast. So how did the other boats avoid the reef, even though some sailed very close? Well, some of them had additional laptop dongles so detailed charts could be viewed on more than one computer. Some of them had additional outside route planning help before the race, which Vestas Wind didn't have and wasn't allowed to have after the start. And some of them had different crew organizations, where navigation was shared amongst multiple people. But Vestas Wind only had one navigator, who happened to be asleep when they hit the reef. But Before he went to bed, he reiterated his belief that the minimum water depth was 40 meters, and the crew believed him, so even if he had been awake, they probably still would have hit the reef. It was a classic case of group think, where everybody believed what they wanted to believe, which was that there was nothing to hit, and so nobody challenged the navigator, who had made a critical mistake in his rush to plan a new route in his hotel room the night before the race without the detailed chart dongle. But in what was perhaps the comeback of the century, the Vestas wind team managed to free their stranded boat from the reef and load it onto a freighter, where it was shipped back to Europe and rebuilt in only 4 months, just in time to join the final 2 legs of the race, where they managed a second-place podium in the 8th leg. Remember to leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and watch this next video.